It feels like we've been talking nonstop about the midterms for the last few months. I don't know, I feel like every few days there's a new article about some Senate candidate or an interesting primary challenge in a deep blue or red state. I mean, hey, I'm guilty of this too, but what is all this commentary for? I think the midterms provide some weird kind of comfort for people following politics closely, particularly for those on the left today. Now, it may not feel like it, but we're already 14 months into the second Trump administration. Okay, maybe it does feel like it's already been 14 months, but to say it's felt like a nonstop onslaught would be putting it mildly. As of right now, Donald Trump's approval rating sits at around 35% in CNN's latest polling. Now that's his lowest mark of the second term, and his economic approval has cratered to just 31%, the worst of his entire career. Now I get it, focusing on the midterms makes it feel like there's change just around the corner, and to be fair, there definitely is change coming around the corner. But what does that even mean these days? Right now, Democrats hold the generic congressional ballot poll by about 5 points nationally. That's 47 to 42. That's according to the latest polling averages. Now, for context, the party out of power typically gains another 5 points between now and November in midterm years, which means we could be looking at blue wave territory. Say Democrats take Congress in November. What does that mean for us? For the country, exactly. What changes in our day-to-day lives? How about Washington? How about the Trump administration? Will it be slowed down? Because remember, no matter how good the Democrats do, Donald Trump is still the president for a few more years. Now, does that mean we're doomed to 2 years of absolute government gridlock with nothing happening? Is the current fight over Homeland Security funding a glimpse of our future? I want to figure out exactly what it will mean if Democrats win in November. The key thing to understand here for this video is the 3 different ways this election could probably go at this point. I'm gonna label these light, heavy, and super heavy blue waves. Maybe there's an argument Republicans retain control of Congress somehow, but I just don't see that in the data right now. So in each of these 3 outcomes that are progressively better for Democrats, we'll explore what the Democrats can do with different powers that they're given. Because I think if you're listening closely, the Democrats are telling us exactly what they plan to do with that power right now. Let's get into it. Okay, so to understand how these scenarios are gonna play out, we need to understand what's at stake. In the 2026 midterm general election this November, we will see all 435 seats in the US House of Representatives and 35 of the 100 seats in the US Senate up for choosing. Now, Republicans currently control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, but they hold the House of Representatives very narrowly. The current makeup of seats is 215 Democrats and 220 Republicans. So Democrats only need a net gain of 3 seats to take control. I wanna stress that this is an incredibly thin margin. It would be one of the smallest flips needed in modern history. So the first scenario I want to explore is the worst for Democrats, and we're calling that a light blue wave. That's how good I think the numbers are for Democrats right now. Before we get into that, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Monarch. I mean, check this thing out. It's pretty cool, right? Now, if you're anything like me, you find some weird zen in tracking your expenses and budgeting. I was getting to the point where I spent more of my time organizing my finances than understanding them, and that's where Monarch comes in. Monarch syncs with over 13,000 institutions. And the setup only took 10 minutes. And now I can see all my accounts. I'm talking credit cards, investments, recurring bills, my net worth, all on one clean dashboard. And beyond that, the budgets are super customizable to your needs. I'm talking about choosing fixed or flexible spending options. The categories are super customizable. And all of that means there's absolutely no micromanaging. So I'm gonna open up my own personal Monarch page here on my phone. I trust you guys because I wanna show you some of my favorite features on here, right? The first thing is your calendar on your dashboard, right? You get to review every day's purchases. And if I scroll down here to spending, this is my absolute favorite chart every month. I realized I was rapidly approaching the ceiling on my budget for the month, which I had done in February, as you can see with the gray line here. So you can see at the very end of the month, the last couple days, I've really cut down on my spend. All in all, it's just an amazing package. It's also completely private and ad-free. You're the customer, not the product. This is more important than ever with the tools you choose to use in 2026. And there's no trade-off. It works great on the web and on mobile. So if you want 50% off your first year of using this tool, go to monarch.com and use my code Aidan50. You can also click on the QR code here or check out the links in my description down below. Thank you, Monarch. All right, let's get right back to it. So in this first scenario, we'll see what happens if the current sentiment for Democrats sours a little bit. A Democratic victory still happens in the House of Representatives, but it's slimmer than expected. Maybe the Republican gerrymandering attempts in states like Texas and North Carolina took just enough swing seats out of contention. I mean, God forbid, maybe there's a large intimidation attempt by ICE or other federal agencies at polling locations. Maybe people just didn't show up on election day because of a hurricane or something. Or it could be a smart pivot pivot from the Trump administration. I don't know, maybe he begins taking the affordability issue seriously. In the short term, this could end up looking like ending the war in Iran and bringing oil and gas prices back down. If he's able to do that and prices somehow do come down at the pump, at the grocery store, the blue wave we see coming could potentially shrink. Okay, now in this scenario, the final tally for Democrats is 222 seats, which is just over the 218 seat requirement to have the majority. Take a race like Colorado's 8th district, where Republican Gabe Evans won by just over a point in 2024 after flipping the seat from Democrats. So in this scenario where Democrats are underperforming how we expect them to perform, these are exactly the kind of seats they fail to win back. Now, funny enough, this 222 number is the same number of seats Republicans had when they took the House from Democrats in 2022. I chose this because a scenario like this would be eerily reminiscent to the 2022 midterm elections. Polls at the time suggested that midterm election would be a red wave election, but the party did worse than polls expected them to, than a lot of politicians expected them to do. The election was so much better for Democrats than they expected that it's largely understood to be a big reason why Joe Biden decided to run for re-election. The same thing happens to Democrats that happened to Republicans in this scenario. Now, in case you're wondering, how did the Senate go here? They did not get the Senate back. But they gained 2 seats, which is good, but not enough to take control of the chamber. Just so you know, for all of our scenarios, Democrats need to flip 4 seats from Republicans for that to happen. So what does this victory mean in practice? Well, we actually have some direct parallels to draw from. Both the 2018 and 2022 midterm elections resulted in the party out of power regaining the House of Representatives, but losing the Senate. And this allowed similar dynamics to take place in both the Biden and Trump administrations. Namely, it allowed both presidents to continue appointing justices at rapid rates not seen from other previous presidents. Fun fact, in Trump's first term, he appointed 54 appeals court judges, sorry. I mess that term up a lot in these videos. Maybe I should stop talking about judges as much. Appeals court judges. That 54 number nearly matched Obama's record of 55, which, mind you, took him twice as many years to appoint. And then Biden largely matched Trump's numbers. So what can the Democrats do in Congress when they only have half of it? Not much. And the things they can do are largely defensive, especially with this Supreme Court and how they've decided powers can be used in the lower branch. After winning the House in 2018, Democrats issued a flurry of subpoenas at the White House, eventually resulting in the ruling called Trump v. Mazars in 2020. 2020. Now, people don't talk about this case a lot, but it's pretty important here. It created a rigorous 4-part test that guarantees congressional oversight will be bogged down in prolonged litigation, rather than immediate disclosure. Basically, in layman's terms, Congress doesn't have the immediate power over the presidency that they used to. They can't demand things from the White House anymore in any immediate fashion. So because these subpoenas are so slow now, the primary vehicle for checking executive action shifts entirely to the appropriations and budgeting process. I know, it sounds so fun. I feel like I say this all the time, but trust me, it's important. Democrats can try to utilize certain tools in the lower branch. One of these is called a limitation rider. It would limit how agencies can spend allocated money. This could be used against ICE, for example. In case you don't know, ICE got an infusion of cash. And when I say an infusion of cash, I mean a seriously big infusion of cash. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed last July with the Republican Congress and Donald Trump in office, gave $75 billion in supplemental funding on top of its normal $10 billion budget. That puts ICE projected spending for 2026 at around $30 billion, more than Poland's entire military budget and nearly triple what the agency has ever spent in a single year. And keep in mind, this money is separate and is not hampered by the partial government shutdown. But this increase could be restricted in theory under a tool like this in a Democratic Congress. We'll see, right? At a larger level though, this change in who controls the House would mean that Republicans can't pass any more bills like the Big Beautiful Bill Act from last year, since the House would need to bring a vote on it to the floor, which Democrats will not do. But if we take an even further step back, right, this scenario is not good for Democrats. If the party can't turn this political environment into a tangible win, it spells very bad news for the future elections. I'm talking about 2028 and especially after the 2030 census. In case you haven't been following this, Democratic stronghold states like California and New York, which are growing at far slower paces than other states, are expected to lose House seats and electoral college votes for the president due to rapid growth in states like Texas and Florida. So if this light blue wave, forgive me for the metaphor, washes up on shore, the Democrats are in for a lot more soul searching. Expect even more books and podcasts and guys growing beards that shouldn't be growing beards. I'm sure you don't want to think about that as much as I don't want to think about that. So what's the next scenario? Now here's where things start to get interesting. So in this second scenario, the Democrats closed the midterm elections with a large, more tangible majority in the House and a surprise win in the Senate. Now, for this to be the case, I think the national environment has to look pretty similar to this exact moment. I made a video over on my second channel up here, you might have seen it, talking about exactly where the Senate sits right now, what states I think Democrats are projected to win and lose, and I think if you add it up right now, Democrats are in a pretty good spot. So let's explore what else needs to happen for this to remain the case by November, and what that spells out for the next 2 years of politics after this. In this scenario, Donald Trump's popularity remains in the 30s, and Democrats run strong candidates in important Senate races, with scandals that are entirely manageable for the most part. Graham Plattner in Maine talking to you. In a shock to the political worldview of commentators, the Democrats finally managed to flip a Senate seat in Texas. That's right, James Talarico manages to beat out Ken Paxton in the most closely watched race of the cycle. And with similar wins for Democratic candidates in states that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, I'm talking about Alaska, North Carolina, and Georgia, it gives Democrats very narrow control of the Senate. I know some of you are gonna flame me in the comments, Georgia didn't vote overwhelmingly for Trump, but just roll with it, please. Let me be clear. Under a scenario where Democrats really take control of both chambers of Congress, the strategic landscape for them shifts entirely. Their power to pass sweeping new laws remains limited by the president's veto pen, but a unified Congress unlocks critical constitutional levers against the Trump administration. And this is the path I think we're currently on. The first thing we see is a complete freeze on Trump's ability to appoint anyone. With majority control, Democrats can utilize blanket holds on judicial nominees, ambassadors, and Department of Justice appointments. Now, how does this work? The tactic forces the majority leader to burn valuable floor time on cloture votes, effectively freezing the executive branch's staffing pipeline. Now, the Democrats could use this to extract policy concessions from the Trump administration, or just hamper them from executing their goals at all, and refusing to appoint anyone. The biggest impact this will have is on the Supreme Court, if a vacancy comes up. Now, not to be morbid or anything here, but there are two conservative justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, that are 76 and 77 respectively. Now, there's already rumors going around Capitol Hill that Samuel Alito may plan on stepping down early. I'm talking like this fall, to make sure Republicans can appoint a conservative judge and take his place while they still can. Alito is actually planning a book tour in the late fall. Now, that's a time when justices are usually reviewing cases. Take that for what you will. If another slot opens up on the bench while Democrats control the Senate, I don't think it would be a stretch to say there is no scenario where they would let Donald Trump appoint yet another conservative to the court. We could see a Supreme Court missing a 9th justice for the better part of a year under the most extreme scenarios. Now, this actually has precedent. There was a vacancy on the Supreme Court for 841 days over 2 years from 1844 to 1846 because of similar partisan disputes. I think one of the most interesting things about this scenario, though, is how good it tends to be viewed by the institutions around government. While this level of institutional combat sounds chaotic, financial markets often react positively to the legislative paralysis of a split government. These corporate sectors thrive on the stability that comes from the government no longer being able to enact sudden regulatory change. And I think right now especially, there's a lot of money on the sidelines waiting for things to calm down in the markets. And I think this kind of thought would extend to how voters think about the Democrats in this scenario. They would be seen as the moderating party, putting a stop to the extremes of the Trump administration. I'd argue that's a good thing for their brand right now. Now imagine this kind of fight in the Senate, combined with the House's own attack plan we talked about in the earlier scenario. This war on two fronts, I believe, would be great for the Democratic brand. Now, these public opinion polls from across the ideological spectrum show Democrats' biggest problem is their perception of being weak, followed up by being too ideologically extreme. At the end of the day, everything the Democrats do in Congress in 2027 is to water the seeds for the 2028 presidential race. A better Democratic brand going into that race could do the party wonders. You know what else would do the party wonders though? Liking and subscribing to the channel, obviously, and what's happening in this third scenario. Okay, now for our final scenario today. Under the super heavy blue wave, I'm trademarking that term by the way, we are in for a real treat. The Democrats end the night with a massive 54 majority in the Senate, flipping every swing state blue, and better yet, winning an independent but Democratic caucusing seat in Montana, and Dan Osborne wins his race as an independent against the incumbent Republican senator in Nebraska, which takes another seat from Republicans. The House is solidly Democratic now. So solid they could probably lose the presidential race in 2028 and still keep the House. This is a generational, maybe twice in a lifetime kind of victory. And if Donald Trump's approval ratings continue on this downward trajectory, I don't think it's entirely out of question. So what happens now? A few things. Much like the 2006 midterms paved the way for a transformative 2008 election with Barack Obama, a super heavy wave sends a clear, undeniable mandate to the public about what voters want next from the party and their next presidential nominee. If Congress ends up actually looking like this in 2027, Democrats should consider a maneuver they made back in 2008. Having won control of Congress handily in 2006, Democrats had to decide whether to send President George W. Bush an omnibus budget bill or to be more surgical, forcing him to veto a popular bill with the public and highlight the GOP's policy positions being out of step with everyday Americans. Senate Majority Leader Democrat Harry Reid and Speaker Nancy Pelosi at the time prevailed in getting the House and Senate to send him two bills funding an expansion of the Children's Health Insurance Program, which before Obamacare provided additional health care to 10 million children. The president, as expected, vetoed the bills, and nothing seemed to happen in the short term, but the substantive and political effects would play out over the course of years, and this veto had a part in it. Then President Barack Obama used the momentum and mentioned this veto on the campaign trail to help him get elected, and eventually passed the Affordable Care Act a few years later. Choosing which bills the Democrats want to promote next year will be the challenge of the party under this scenario. The next question is whether Democrats will heed the wisdom from that 2006 lesson, right? Will they actually put this much time into passing bills highlighting their own agenda, or will they dedicate more energy to fighting Donald Trump? I'd argue you want to go with the former. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot in 2028. Probably. As far as which bills should be promoted, I'm not an expert on this, but there's some easy examples, right? I think there's a strong argument it should begin with raising the minimum wage, which hasn't been changed since 2009 and is quite popular. They could pass a Utility Ratepayers Bill of Rights, which has been promoted by several Democrats to rein in private utility companies, especially as people's utility bills get higher and higher due to AI data center buildouts. And if those aren't up to speed for the Democratic Congress of 2027, maybe an ethics reform package that cleans up Washington and bans insider betting on prediction markets. The Democrats need to pick some kind of legislative focus in 2027 if they control Congress, especially if they have a strong control of Congress. They'd force Trump and his allies in Congress to veto and vote against bills that unite the Democrats, divide the Republicans, and lay the foundation for the electoral victories of 2028 and beyond for the Democrats. Now, the biggest prize for the party in this scenario of a massive victory is a reformed image of the Democratic Party. Remember what I said earlier about Democrats being perceived as weak by the general public. Just by virtue of a massive victory, the party would see real benefits projecting strength. I mean, look what they've done since the 2024 loss, right? They're cursing more, growing beards, talking about sports. There is a real effort right now due to their loss to project strength. Just look at their attempts this cycle to field locally authentic candidates. Many are leaning hard into local culture signals. Maine's potential Senate candidate, Graham Plattner, has his oystering farm and his Second Amendment creds. Texas's James Tallarico has the Bible. Alaska's Barry Peltola has fish. She loves fish. If these candidates can prove that they can win, it will inform the kind of Democrat that becomes the 2028 presidential nominee. And better yet, I think a scenario like this makes a Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris 2028 candidacy feel far less likely. For all you Newsom and Harris haters, the chosen candidate will have to show strength, like the rest of the party, not conforming to the ideas as they change in the zeitgeist. At the end of the day, these are all hypotheticals, but understanding that these kinds of things happen in cycles is important for staying grounded when following the news. I mean, to be real here, it feels like the chaos of the day is unraveling everything around us. But I bet if you check back on this playbook in a year, one of these scenarios is probably gonna play out. Just wait and see. Oh, and vote. Don't forget to vote. There's a lot of primaries coming up. Check when your primary is. So if understanding how our system works is so important, let's see if the guy you've been listening to this whole time knows what he's talking about. So I was debating for a while whether or not what I'm about to do is in good taste. I'm like, how do I preface this? Maybe I should just rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to take the citizenship test. I should clarify, I'm going to take part of the citizenship test. Now you may be asking, why are you doing this? Are you just doing this to flex? The average person taking the citizenship test obviously isn't doing political commentary videos on YouTube. And I think that's a great point. I've gone back and forth on this a bit, but I want to use this to call attention to something I don't think got enough news last year. Starting last October, the Trump administration has changed what citizenship test questions are asked of green card residents looking to become American citizens. Now, at some point, you may have taken a quiz online, some kind of multiple choice sort of selection of questions. to see if you could pass the citizenship test. I've done that too. So if you have any reference for what this test used to be like I did, then you should know that this new test is a bit harder. You now have to answer twice as many questions correctly, from 6 out of 10 to 12 out of 20. And it's featuring an expanded bank of questions from 100 questions to a new 128. That's not just 28 new questions. There's been a fair amount of old questions that have been removed. Now they did these modifications to, quote, ensure full assimilation among new citizens, whatever that means. Now, I might be crazy in saying this, but I think some of the questions being removed might make sense. But some of the ones added don't. For example, the question, what ocean is on the west coast of the United States, is being removed. And it's being replaced with questions like, why did the United States enter the Persian Gulf War? And keep in mind, this is an oral test. You need to answer these questions right from up here. It's not a multiple choice test. So to cut right to it, I had somebody put together a little Quizlet for me. Now, this is only 10 questions on here, and they're tied more to what we were talking about in this video, but I wanted to see how I do on this. If you saw my last video where I took a geography quiz, that may have shaken your faith a little bit in me. At least that's what some of you said in the comments. So I want to make sure I vet myself again for you guys, so you can choose whether or not to believe anything I have said in this video. The answer to the Persian Gulf question, by the way, was to force the Iraqi military from Kuwait. Cool. Okay. First question we have here, how many US senators are there? I know this one. I probably shouldn't act so high and mighty about this. I literally got a degree studying this kind of thing. If I didn't know this, I'd be totally fine with you guys starting a petition for UCLA to revoke my diploma. The answer is 100. Oh, it doesn't tell me if I got it right away. Okay, well, we're gonna hope that that was correct. Name one branch or part of the government. Why was I spacing on that for so long? The executive. Oh God. My cognition and spelling aren't what they used to be, I guess. Okay, here we go. This one's a little more nuanced. Why do some states have more representatives than other states? Because of, well, I'd argue this is because of population, right? Every 10 years, we do a census and reapportion representatives to each state based on their growth rate. That feels fair. How do I tech that? Sure, I hope. Yeah, all right. Next one. Holy shit. What does the Constitution do? Like a lot of stuff, right? What are they asking for here? I feel like I could do a whole 20-minute video on this. They want a one-sentence answer. If you're actually taking this test, I would advise you to prep for it beforehand. I'm gonna go the separation of powers route here. I'm gonna say it assigns powers to the different branches of government. And gives us our rights. Yeah, okay, all right. The House of Representatives has how many voting members? 435 voting members. There's a representative from the District of Columbia that does not vote, I believe. Are they the 436th? I'm gonna do a 435. I feel like that's what they're asking for. I should know that. I should look that up. I don't know. I'd say at this point, there's a good 22% of the audience that is yelling at me through the screen. And that's fine. I deserve that. All right, next. Who's the commander-in-chief of the military? The president. Who makes federal laws? Congress. Those both feel correct, right? Congress makes the law. The president signs it into law. What stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? Checks and balances. Is that just what they're looking for? Or are we just going with that? Like one branch has certain powers over another branch to keep them in check, in theory. Some videos of mine, I think, came to the conclusion that this isn't working all that well. What do you think? Let's go with checks and balances. What is the rule of law? What? The rule of law is the rule of law. This test is killing me. I feel like we're going from super easy fodder questions to the weirdest questions I've ever heard of. Are these questions randomly assigned, or can those giving the oral test choose what questions to give people? Because if you pick a certain lot of these questions that are more like, what is the rule of law, and pull together at least 12 of those into a test, I feel like you get to choose that those people have a much harder chance of becoming citizens. Right? I don't know. I'm gonna go probably something to do with enforcement, right? I feel like I'm back in college. Things. Enforcement of things. What is one power of the federal government? Oh, what's one thing we haven't talked about so far? Taxing, right? Setting federal taxes. Okay, to be so honest, I don't feel great about this. I've also never taken a practice test on Quizlet. I don't remember this being a thing back in the day when I was in school. Okay, let's see how we did. All right, 3, 2, 1. I don't think that's right. I don't think I only got a 30% on that. Do I need to answer them exactly how they have them on the practice test? Okay, here we go. Number 2. This is correct. I put executive. That's one of the choices that could be correct. Quizlet, your practice tests suck. Don't love it. So far I got 40%. Because of the population, because of the state's population, this is another one. All right, I'm at 50%. Come on, I can bring this back. What does the Constitution do? Okay, I guess theirs is a much more fundamental answer that makes a lot more sense. Sets up the government, defines the government. I swear I know what the Constitution is, guys. Okay, we're at 50%. If I get one more right, I pass the test based on the old requirements. So let's see. Okay, who makes federal laws? Congress is here. Congress is one of the answers available. All right, we got 60%. I'll take it. Checks and balances, checks and balances. We got that right too. 70%. Bringing it back. That's a passing grade in normal school. Rule of law. All right, sure. I'll take the L on that. We're still at 70. We can get 80. We can get 80. How is the last one doing? Okay, one power of the federal government. Setting federal taxes is not on here, but it is a power. I'm counting that. I'm going to say I got an 80% on that. Yeah, anyway, I hope you had fun with that. This video is part 1 of 3. The second part of this trilogy is going to deal with the state of the play of the midterms. So be sure to look out for that. Okay, this was fun. You guys thought this was fun, right? Please don't get mad at me. You got so mad at me last time for the geography video. Anyway, all right, I'll see you guys later.